I want to tell you about a mistake, not a small one. A $47,000 mistake made by a good man from Moncton, New Brunswick, named Raymond, who spent 2 summers watching his brand new cruiser sit at the dock because something was always broken, something was always back-ordered, and the dealer he bought it from was always very sorry but very busy. Meanwhile, 20 meters away, an older couple named Walt and Elaine were quietly loading groceries onto a 1978 trawler they'd paid $26,000 for. Walt's boat had crossed the Northumberland Strait 4 times that summer. Raymond's boat had crossed it 0 times. I've been in the Canadian marine industry long enough to have watched this exact pattern play out in New Brunswick, in Nova Scotia, in Ontario, in BC, and every province where people keep boats. And every single time, the cause is the same. Canadians are ignoring the right boats and buying the wrong ones, because the right ones are older and the wrong ones are on a dealer's lot with a financing option and a coffee machine in the showroom. Here's the truth that the Canadian boating industry will never put in an advertisement. The most reliable, most capable, most cost-efficient trawlers available to a Canadian buyer today are not new. They were built between 1965 and 1995. They are sitting in marinas from Victoria to St. John's. They are dramatically underpriced, and the people who know this are not talking loudly about it because they are too busy actually using their boats to spend time on forums arguing with people who bought new. Today I'm going to name 7 of these boats specifically. I'm going to tell you exactly what makes each one worth your attention, exactly what each one costs to buy in today's Canadian market, and exactly why the boat sitting at number 1 on this list represents, in my professional opinion, after 30-plus years of surveys and sea trials in Canadian waters, the single biggest value opportunity in the country's used boat market right now. The biggest mistake you can make in Canada's boat market is to keep scrolling. So don't. Number 7, the Ka-Ching 35, also sold as the Ocean Alexander 35. Bruce is a semi-retired contractor from Kelowna. He drove to Vancouver specifically to look at a new Beneteau trawler that a friend had recommended. He stood in front of it for 20 minutes, did the math on the $195,000 price tag, and drove home. 2 weeks later, I showed him a Ka-Ching 35. What most people don't realize is that the Ka-Ching yard in Taiwan built boats for multiple North American brand names simultaneously, and the craftsmanship was consistent regardless of what badge ended up on the hull. The Ka-Ching 35, sold under various names including Ocean Alexander, was designed for serious cruising, not weekend entertainment. Bruce paid 31,000 Canadian for a 1984 model with a Perkins diesel and original teak interior. The engine room access panel alone, perfectly positioned, generously sized with lighting, represents more practical intelligence than most new boats demonstrate anywhere in their layout. The financial comparison: Bruce's all-in cost, including a professional survey, fresh bottom paint, and updated safety gear, was $37,000. The Beneteau he walked away from was $195,000. For the difference, $158,000, Bruce bought a second cottage property on Okanagan Lake. He uses both regularly. Who should buy a Ka-Ching 35? BC coastal cruisers and interior lake buyers who want Taiwanese quality construction without paying Ocean Alexander resale prices. Who should avoid it? Anyone who needs their boat to be a status symbol? The Ka-Ching name means nothing to marina neighbors. Number 6, the Tollycraft 34. Tri-Cabin. I've recommended Tollycraft boats to more Pacific Northwest buyers than any other brand at the under $50,000 level. The reason is simple. Tollycraft built their boats in Kelso, Washington, 100 kilometers from the BC border, and they built them for Pacific water specifically. A retired BC hydro technician named Norm found a Tollycraft 34 Tri-Cabin in a Richmond, BC marina for $38,000. He called me to ask if the price was fair. I told him to make the offer before someone else did. Here's what nobody tells you about the Tri-Cabin layout. The separate forward stateroom, mid-cabin, and aft sleeping area give genuine live-aboard capability to a boat under 35 feet. Norm spent his first summer aboard, anchored in Desolation Sound, for 11 consecutive nights. He said the only thing he missed about his house in Coquitlam was the shower pressure. Everything else, the views, the silence, the freedom, was better on the boat. Who should buy a Tollycraft 34 Tri-Cabin? BC coastal buyers wanting Pacific Northwest construction quality and genuine live-aboard space in a manageable size. Who should avoid it? Buyers planning extended offshore passages. The Tollycraft is a coastal cruiser, not an ocean passage maker. Number 5. The CHP 4245 Trawler. Step up in size and the CHP story gets even more compelling. The larger CHP models, 42 and 45 feet, were built to a specification that included structural elements more commonly found in commercial workboats than in pleasure craft. I've surveyed 3 of these in the past decade. Each time, the hull inspection produces the same reaction from whoever I'm working with. Genuine surprise at the weight, thickness, and integrity of the construction. A couple from Sault Ste. Marie, Gary, and Patricia found a CHB 42 in a Parry Sound, Ontario marina. They were looking for a Great Lakes cruiser they could eventually take coastal. The CHB 42, with its full keel and protected running gear, is one of very few boats in this price range. They paid $54,000. That is genuinely capable of making the St. Lawrence run and continuing down the East Coast. The detail that changes everything. CHB used solid fiberglass construction throughout. No cord hull panels, no balsa, no potential for moisture intrusion and delamination. In a Great Lakes climate where boats see ice, freeze cycles, and sustained cold water exposure, this is not a minor point. It is the difference between a boat that requires constant structural monitoring and one that does not. Who should buy a CHB 42? Great Lakes buyers wanting offshore potential, couples planning the Great Loop, or serious cruisers who want maximum structural integrity at under $65,000. Who should avoid it? Buyers who need speed or aren't prepared for a heavier, slower displacement vessel. Number 4. The Marine Trader 38. Before we continue, if you've been taking notes on this video, you already know more about the Canadian used trawler market than 90% of buyers who will walk into a brokerage this year. The information I'm sharing here comes from 30-plus years of surveys, sea trials, and real conversations with real owners across every Canadian boating region. If you want to keep receiving this kind of content, subscribe right now. No algorithms, no sponsored segments, just real experience. Subscribe and let's keep going. The Marine Trader 38 is a boat that I have seen misunderstood in listings, dismissed at docks, and passed over by buyers who then spent twice as much on something that gave them half the quality. It is one of the most consistently undervalued vessels in the Canadian market. A woman named Diane, retired teacher from Quebec City, came to me wanting a trawler she could cruise the St. Lawrence system solo. She was practical, experienced, and not impressed by appearances. She had a budget of $70,000. I showed her a Marine Trader 38. What most people don't realize about the 38 specifically, as opposed to the smaller Marine Trader 34, is that the added length brings proportional increases in fuel capacity, water tankage, and interior volume that dramatically change the liveaboard and extended cruising capability of the boat. Diane's Marine Trader 38 carries 350 gallons of fuel. At her cruising speed of 7 knots, that gives her a genuine range of over 800 nautical miles. She can leave Quebec City and reach the Maritimes without a fuel stop if conditions allow. She paid $62,000, spent $4,000 on fresh systems work. Total investment, $66,000. A new boat with equivalent range capability would cost $300,000 minimum. Who should buy a Marine Trader 38? Solo cruisers, couples wanting extended range on the St. Lawrence and Atlantic coast, liveaboards who prioritize interior comfort. Who should avoid it? Buyers wanting speed or a sporty aesthetic. The Marine Trader is a utility vessel that happens to be beautiful, not the other way around. Number 3. The Willard 36. Trawler. The Willard 36 sits in a very specific niche in the Canadian market. It is one of the very few trawlers under 40 feet that is genuinely, legitimately qualified for offshore passage making. Not capable in calm conditions. Not suitable for protected waters. Offshore. Full stop. A couple from Victoria, James and his partner, bought a Willard 36 with the stated intention of sailing, cruising, to Hawaii. I surveyed it. The hull was exactly what Willard built their reputation on. Heavier than you expect, more solid than you believe, better protected below the waterline than boats costing 4 times the price. James paid $49,000. Here's what nobody tells you about Willard boats. The company built them in California during an era when the California market demanded offshore-capable vessels in accessible sizes, and they built them to withstand conditions that most East Coast and Great Lakes buyers have never encountered. That engineering is embedded in the hull whether you ever leave coastal BC waters or not. It means the boat simply does not flex, does not delaminate, and does not surprise you with structural problems. James and his partner made it to Hawaii. They came back too. The boat is in Victoria right now, waiting for next summer. Who should buy a Willard 36? Serious offshore cruisers, BC and Atlantic coast buyers planning extended passages, anyone who refuses to compromise on structural integrity. Who should avoid it? Buyers who want modern interior appointments. The Willard interior is functional, not luxurious. Number 2. The Grand Banks. 42. There are boats that are underrated, and there are boats that are correctly priced for their quality. The Grand Banks 42 sits in an unusual middle ground. It is both underpriced relative to what it offers and still the most respected name among serious Canadian cruisers in its size range. That tension, widely respected but still undervalued in dollar terms, is exactly why it earns the number 2 position on this list. I worked with a retired mining engineer from Sudbury named Dennis, who had spent 5 years convincing himself he couldn't afford a Grand Banks. He could. He just couldn't afford a new one. The used Grand Banks 42 market in Canada sits between $110,000 and $180,000 for well-maintained 1980s examples. Dennis paid $128,000 for a 1983 model with original teak throughout and a twin-engine layout. What most people don't realize about the Grand Banks 42 specifically is that the twin-engine configuration, unusual in trawlers this size, gives you a redundancy and a maneuverability in tight anchorages and narrow channels that single-engine vessels simply cannot match. On Lake Huron, on the Trent Severn, in a crowded False Creek marina, the ability to use differential thrust to turn the boat in its own length is, after the first time you do it, something you never want to give up. Dennis cruised the North Channel last summer, widely considered one of the most beautiful and demanding cruising grounds in the world, and reported back that the Grand Banks handled every anchorage, every channel, and every weather event with complete composure. His words, "It makes every other boat I've owned feel like a toy." Who should buy a Grand Banks 42? Experienced cruisers with a budget between $100,000 and $180,000 who want the best-regarded name in offshore trawlers at used market prices. Who should avoid it? First-time trawler buyers who aren't ready for the maintenance commitment of a twin-engine vessel with teak throughout. Number 1. The DeFever. 44. Raymond from Moncton, the man I told you about at the beginning, the one watching Walt and Elaine's old trawler cross the Northumberland Strait while his new boat sat broken at the dock, called me 2 years after that summer. He'd sold the new boat at a loss. He wanted to know what he should have bought instead. I told him, a DeFever 44. Raymond is now the owner of a 1979 DeFever 44 that he bought for $81,000 Canadian from a retiring couple in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. He spent $11,000 on a proper refit, new electronics, fresh impellers and heat exchangers, updated safety equipment, professional rigging inspection. $92,000 all in for a vessel that his surveyor called, without hesitation, the best-built boat I've examined in this price range in 20 years of surveying. Here's what nobody tells you about why the DeFever 44 specifically is the most important boat on this list for Canadian buyers. Arthur DeFever designed these hulls to handle the worst conditions the Pacific could offer. And the Pacific is no gentler than the Atlantic, and no more forgiving than Georgian Bay in October. When Raymond crosses the Northumberland Strait now, he crosses it in a boat that was designed to handle conditions 100 times worse, and he crosses it with the confidence of a man who finally made the right decision. The Lehman diesel in Raymond's boat is the same marinized Ford industrial engine that parts suppliers in Moncton, in Halifax, in Sydney, Nova Scotia carry on their shelves. The full keel protects the running gear on every tidal approach. The protected prop means Raymond has never once worried about what's below the surface when he's entering an unfamiliar anchorage. Here is the complete summary of what I've shown you today. The Kashing 35 for BC buyers who want Taiwanese construction quality without premium resale pricing. The Tollycraft 34 for Pacific Northwest coastal cruising with genuine live-aboard space. The CHB 42 for Great Lakes buyers who want offshore potential and bulletproof structure. The Marine Trader 38 for extended range St. Lawrence and Atlantic cruising. The Willard 36 for anyone serious enough about offshore capability to stop compromising. The Grand Banks 42 for the best-regarded name in the category at used market prices. And the DeFever 44 at number 1, the single most ignored, most undervalued, most capable trawler available in the Canadian market today. Ignoring these boats is the biggest mistake you can make in Canada's boat market. Raymond already made it once. He told me to make sure nobody else has to. If this helped you, please like this video, Leave a comment telling me where you're planning to cruise and subscribe so you never miss another one of these. There are more overlooked boats, more underpriced opportunities, and more insider knowledge still to come. Don't miss it.